your thoughts about the Republican health care plan? Well, they call it a health care plan. They call it the American Health Care Act. But it is a wealth grab. It's not a health plan. If it passes, which is shaky at best, but if it does pass, the rich will become richer. Most other people, in fact, virtually all other people, will lose out, and our nation's already record high levels of inequality will become even higher. In fact, way higher. First of all, let's set the stage. For decades and decades, maybe 3 decades after the end of the Second World War, we had a pretty stable relationship where the top 1% of the nation's earners got about 10% of the national income, the bottom 50% got about 20%. That's flipped around. So the 50% has lost out. The top 10% has done better on income. Now, income gains used to go to everybody. Now, if you look at the charts, they just go to the wealthiest among us. And it's even worse when you think about wealth, because wealth, which is all the assets that people own, might be real estate, might be stocks, might be other property, that has gone very much in the direction of the wealthy. In fact, wealth inequality is now 100 times worse than income inequality. Meanwhile, the rich have gotten tax breaks. Back in the 1950s, the top marginal tax rate, the ones paid on your millionth or billionth dollar of income, was 92%. Today, it's under 40%. Now, those top 10% of Americans that I mentioned to you that make about 20% of the income, they own 76%, more than 3/4 of the national wealth. In fact, if you look at the top 30 countries in terms of wealth inequality, we are essentially at the bottom. That's the world that we're looking at today. Now, with the Republican plan in effect, that plan would provide a big tax break of almost 4% for, guess what, investment income. In other words, that incredibly unequal wealth that we're talking about, there are people out there who make money not by working, which is called earned income, but by unearned income through just profiting off the stuff they own. That's becoming a bigger and bigger part of the economy, 100 times more unequal than income inequality. That's who benefits the most from the Republican plan, because the Republican plan would lift the Affordable Care Act's surcharge on that income. Now, let's be honest, that surcharge that the Affordable Care Act placed on that unearned wealth, and that was only, by the way, for income above $200,000 for an individual, $250,000 for a couple, that was the most progressive thing the Democrats have done in many years. So no wonder the Republicans want to undo it. What do they want to do instead? They want to place the financial burden for all sorts of health care on middle class and lower income Americans. The poor will be hurt most of all because essentially they're trying to phase out Medicaid with this plan. They've shown us who they are. Now it's time for the left to show them who we are by calling for a rational system of health care that is fair and just. We call it Medicare for all.